It's the only person below White Holiday in the ComicsGate phone book. It's my favorite failed clone of Peter Sammetti. The YouTube WyzGyz. How you doing, Connie? Welcome to the show.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to WyzGyz Entertainment. This is your host, Wyman. We are joined today by a very special guest, Andy Smith. How's it going?
Good, man. How you doing?
Very good. Thank you so much for coming on. It took some work, but we finally connected.
Yeah. You know.
I think it was mostly scheduling and stuff. Welcome, Eric McIntyre. Thanks for coming.
Hey, what's up, Eric?
Hey. All right. How have you been today?
Oh, not too bad. Just doing some work. Just doing a little scribbling this morning, as I like to call it.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Since this is your first time on the channel, will you take a moment, please, and just share your origin story? How did you grow up? What were you into? Were you into comics, toys, whatever? And what were the key areas, moments in your life that led you to ultimately becoming a crowd-funded comic creator?
Well, growing up wise, I grew up in Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C., and I got my first comic, I think it was like 1982 or 83. It was a Captain America 275 by Mike Zeck and John Beatty, who a few short years later in 1991, I would become friends with and actually share a studio with John Beatty in Florida. So that in itself, when I still think about, that in 1983 to 1991, that's what, 8 years? As a kid, 8 years is a long time. As an adult, 8 years goes by like that.
Yeah.
So, looking back on that and thinking that my 13-year-old self was going to be sharing a studio with one of the creators of that comic that I bought just would have blew my mind. But I always loved superheroes and cartoons as a kid growing up. And I always drew. Now, before I discovered superheroes, my first love, I guess, was cars. And I still love cars, sports cars and things like that. And I drew cars in elementary school a lot. And then when I discovered comics, I switched over and started trying to, draw superheroes. And it's just, I think I think every kid draws. I've got a 17-year-old daughter, and when she was like 2-3 years old, she liked to draw, but she grew out of it. And I think with artists, whether it be comics, painting, whatever, you just don't grow out of it, and you don't, as a kid at least, you don't have these blocks of, well, I can't do this. So when I was like drawing cars, I was just like, well, I can draw cars. Didn't matter how bad they looked. I was just like, I can do this.
Right.
When I made that switch to wanting to draw comics, I was just like, well, I can try and draw people. I mean, why not? So I would just start trying to draw people. And it's funny, one of the toys I collected as a kid was this bad boy.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the original, that's original 1983 right there, He-Man. So I lost his, at some point along the way, in the past 37 years, I lost his sword and his shield.
Oh, man.
Which I'm trying to find, but those things aren't cheap. So
not the originals. Do you see how they were? You see how they?
So anyhow, I decided, looking through a comic, when I was collecting comics, I saw an ad for the Hubert School, the Joe Hubert School. And it was like, oh my God, there's a school that just is for comic book artists. This is awesome. Because until then, I just figured, well, I guess I'd go to, regular college like University of Maryland and just take art classes. But when I found that school, I told my parents very feverishly that this is where I want to go. And they were, you know, like most parents, they were probably like, okay, that's fine. But then, and that's when I was like 13 or 14. And throughout all high school, I just kept saying, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to go. So we visited the school, and I went through the interview process and got accepted. And in my third year of the school, which is senior, because it's only a 3-year school, I met Bart Sears, who was teaching second-year students at the time. And even though I was a third-year student and didn't have him as a teacher, I was like, well, that's not going to stop me. I want to introduce myself to him. So I introduced myself to him and showed him my work. And I guess he saw something in it, because he kind of took me under his wing and mentored me on his own time after school hours, and just kind of showed me the ropes and would critique my work and help me with my homework assignments by, you know, kind of like the teachers would do, putting tracing paper over the stuff and showing where I was, you know, could do things better.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
You know, and that led to March of 1991. He was going up to DC Comics to drop some stuff off, hit some Justice League pages, and he asked if I wanted to go, and I said, yeah. So I went up with some sample pages and showed them to some editors, and they gave me some feedback and told me things to work on, and said, you know, once you do these things, do some new sample pages and come back.
Oh.
So I did, and I went back like 2 weeks later with Bart again. And, you know, the editors were kind of surprised, because I came back, you know, in a very timely manner.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't just, and who knows if it was like a test or on them saying, do this stuff and come back to see if I would or not. But I did. And, you know, some of the editors just flat out said, you know, your stuff's really nice. I just don't have anything. And one of the editors said, you know, your stuff's good. I like it. I've got an inventory job I can give you. So they gave me an inventory job on an issue of Suicide Squad to draw.
What's an inventory job?
What's that?
What's an inventory job?
An inventory job is something that they don't do them anymore. But what they would do is they would get a whole book, just one issue of a book, totally finished. So if the book was running late, they could just go to their drawer, because, you know, remember, this is 91, so no computers, no internet, none of that. Everything was all done on paper, and they could just go to their flat files, open a flat file, and go, hey, this book's running late. That's okay. I've got this inventory job that's totally done. Send this to the printer, and then the book won't come out late. So the nice thing about it was, I told the editor, I said, well, you know, I really want to do this job, but I've got 2.5 months left in school, because they knew I was going to the Hubert School. And he said, that's fine. Finish your school. The job will be waiting for when you graduate, and you can work on it then.
Oh my gosh.
So he got me the script, and when I graduated, I kept in contact with him, and then I graduated and was like, you know, I'm done. And he's like, all right, let's get rolling. And I did that job, and from there I would visit DC and, you know, show my first professional job around. And now I was in the business, I guess, and I would be like, here, you know, here's some work I just did. And I talked to other editors, and from there I got some more work, and, you know, just kind of went from there. So.
My goodness. So you got in really early.
Yeah. Yep, 30 years this year.
Holy cow. Happy anniversary.
I know. It's I should get myself a cake.
Oh.
30th anniversary cake.
Exactly. That must be an amazing feeling to be in the industry for so long. That's great.
It is. I mean, time definitely goes by, and it goes by fast.
Eric says,
thanks, Eric, I appreciate it.
FirstMan is one of the books I'm looking forward to the most right now.
Awesome. And in regards to the crowdfunding, you know, I've worked for Marvel, I've worked for DC, I've worked for Image, Valiant, Acclaim, just a lot of companies. And it's just kind of like I realized, well, I'm not really getting any younger, and I've never really done my own thing, and I kind of want to do my own thing. And, you know, it's not like I've won the lottery or anything. So it's like, I don't have to make money from anybody. I can just do this. It's not that. It's just, you know, I've been smart, I guess you could say, over the years with finances and stuff. And I'm kind of at a point where I can kind of roll the dice and see if I can try and make a go of this. And I just don't want, I guess, you know, I don't want another 5 or 10 years to go by and look back and be like, in all that time, I could have been doing this, you know, like trying to do my own thing. So I figured, what the heck?
Totally. So in a sense, it was like wanting to use your own trail, create your own.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I think it's also a really good time in the industry right now with the advent of crowdfunding to do it. You know, it's a gamble, that's for sure. You're rolling the dice because you never know if it's going to be successful or not. And you have to set, I think, realistic goals as well. I mean, you don't want to set a goal of, oh, my first campaign, I'm going to make, you know, millions of dollars. You know what I mean? You need to be realistic about it. And I also think you need to go into it with the attitude of, kind of like the attitude of a small business, where, you know, the old saying with small businesses, you know, you go into a small business realizing that for the first 5 years, you probably won't make anything, or you'll break even. It's kind of the same thing, you know. Hopefully after this campaign, I can do a second one and that'll grow, and then a third one and that'll grow, and so on and so forth. You know, you got to definitely build up a relationship with the fans, a trust relationship, so they know they can trust you to get the stuff out. And that's kind of what I'm trying to build.
Nice. And FirstMan, how long has that been in the, I guess, designing phase? How long have you been thinking about this and developing it?
Oh, I drew FirstMan originally when I was about, he looks a little different now, but he looked, I first designed him. Remember the Marvel Superheroes role-playing game from the 80s? Yeah, that's what I designed him for originally.
Oh.
I made him up for that role-playing game to use as a character, and then the female character in the book, Penumbra, I made her up for the game as well. So I've had them basically since, you know, the mid-'80s rolling around in my head. And I, you know, like I said, I grew up on superhero stuff with Marvel and DC, and that's what I always wanted to do for a living. And knock on wood, I've been lucky enough to be able to do that and work on some really great characters. So I thought, you know, let's do my own superhero, which is tough because, you know, if you look at a lot of the crowdfunding stuff, I think the majority of it isn't superhero stuff, because people think, well, if fans want superheroes, they'll just go to Marvel and DC. You know, so I need to do something that's not, to try and, you know, get those same comic book fans to go, oh, I like superhero stuff, but I also like this creator and he's doing this. And for me, it's just like, well, I think my name is known for doing superhero stuff, so I might as well work on something that, one, you need to work on stuff you enjoy.
Yes.
You know, you're happy doing it. It shows through in the work. And two, if that's what I'm known for, I'm not just all of a sudden going to go, I think I'll draw a 17th century detective story that takes place in, you know, the UK and, you know, is just planted in the real world. I mean, that's just not what I'm known for, you know?
Right.
So I'm going to do what I'm known for. These characters were seen in 2 how to draw books that I did in the early 2000s. Drawing Dynamic Comics is one, and drawing, what is it? I'm trying to remember. It's been, so drawing dynamic comics was my first one, and the second one was drawing American manga superheroes.
Nice.
And I wasn't obviously allowed to use copyrighted characters on those books because the books weren't through Marvel and DC. They were through a publisher up in New York that publishes how-to books. So they said, we love these ideas that I pitched, but you have to use your own characters. And I was like, not a problem. So part of the reason I use these three characters in the book is because it's a male, a female, and then a really big hulking type male character. So I thought those three distinct characters would work well in a How to Draw Comics book.
Oh, all right, cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. And let's bring this up here.
There she is.
FirstMan, Marvel Comics, DC
Yeah.
Comics artist Andy Smith. Action-packed 64-page graphic novel. That's nice. Harkening back to the glorious Marvel Age of Comics. And this is actually this is already your third campaign here?
Yeah, I did one on Kickstarter last year that went in demand on Indiegogo. So that was my second one. That's the Jungle Lords one. And then the one below that is another one I did on Kickstarter last year, but it's not a comic book. It's it's called Dynamic Hero Templates, and the basic gist of the book is when I was a kid growing up, learning to draw, I like to create characters. However, they never came out on paper like I envisioned in my head, and what I envisioned in my head was the professional level drawing that I saw in comic books.
Oh,
so this Dynamic Hero Templates book is a book that I pre-drew 8 different body types of male figures, and the book's printed in really light blue, so you can draw right in the book to design your own characters over.
Oh my gosh, that's interesting. Oh
yeah, and then I also did a female one for the female figure, and they're both available on my website as digital downloads.
Oh.
I think the thing was, so that book, obviously, it got funded on Kickstarter, the Hero Templates one.
All right.
And it is a physical book that I mailed out to the backers that, like I said, you open it up, you draw in it to design your characters. You can ink in it as well if you want. The female book is just purely digital because a lot of people work just digital these days. So it's a digital download, and you can open up the pages in Photoshop or Clip Studio or pretty much any drawing program and just pop a new layer on top and design right over top that way. So those are both sold in my store on my website.
Nice. Are you so you started out as a traditional artist, and I assume you do digital these days?
I do both. I actually do my layouts. I do my layouts in Sketchbook Pro, which is a computer program that I find the pencil feel to it is the closest to paper compared to like Photoshop or Clip Studio. And then after I finish my layouts in Sketchbook Pro, I take them into Photoshop and convert them both to non-photo blue, or not a non-photo blue, but a really light blue. And I print those out onto the 11x17 Bristol board, and then I ink them traditionally with brush and pen. So I still have original art, but most of the drawing I do on a computer because it's just a lot easier drawing on digital when it comes to such a variety of things. If for instance, I'm drawing a figure and I don't like the way an arm looks on paper, I'd probably erase that arm and redraw it. But then if I don't like the new arm, I erased the old one. Whereas digitally, I can put a new layer on top, draw the new arm on a new layer, and see how it looks. And I could do it multiple times, 4 or 5 times with the arm in different positions, and then see which one I like, and whichever one I like, I keep, and then on the original layer, I just erase it away and merge down the revision. So there's lots of benefits to drawing digitally, I found. That's one. There's some great perspective tools for perspective grids in Sketchbook Pro that make figuring out your perspective a lot easier than, traditional on paper. If back in the old days, when I first got into the business, if I had to draw, let's say the Empire State Building, well, I'd find lots of pictures of it. I'd set them up on my desk, and then knowing the rules of perspective and basic drawing that I do, I would draw it using the photos as reference. In this day and age with digital, if I'm not doing an extreme perspective that I can't find a photograph of, say, the Empire State Building, if I'm just doing something, if I Google search Empire State Building and I come across an image and I'm like, that works great, I can just crop it differently. I can pull it into Sketchbook Pro. I don't even have to draw it. I can just put it into the program. I still trace it off, but the point is I'm literally just tracing off the building without having to figure out the perspective and all that. And then if I want to add things, different buildings in front or behind it, I can do that as well, just from my knowledge of knowing how to build scenes and such. So there's a lot of advantages to working digitally, and I think that's why a lot more artists do it. And portability. I also I have my one setup, which is, you can't see it. My webcam is clipped onto my big Cintiq drawing monitor, but I also have an iPad Pro, so I can sit on the couch in my house watching TV if I want to sketch and stuff.
Wow, really sweet.
Import that to my computer and bring it into the Cintiq. So
now, did you say that? Let's see. So your process is to use Sketchbook Pro. You do your layout. And then you use Photoshop to convert it to that very light blue.
Yeah.
And did I hear you right? You actually print it to 11 by 17 Bristol board?
Sure do.
Does it require some kind of special proprietary printer, or is that pretty common?
I have this is just a great thing with technology. Things that, like, the printer I bought, I'm looking at it. It's an Epson Workforce oversize. So with it being oversized means I can print bigger than 11 by 17. I think the width is 13 inches wide. I can print on that thing. So it takes 11 by 17 Bristol, no problem, and it's just a full color printer scanner.
Oh,
and it costs like $200.
That's nice. Every time I think about Bristol, I think kind of a heavy cardstock, and
it is.
It makes me wonder how well it would go over the rollers of a printer.
I was worried about that at first, and the very first printer I had, and this is probably 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, I would just directly feed it through the back of the printer so it went straight through.
Oh.
And in the new printer that I've had for years, it does roll. So I set it in the tray, and then it goes through and has to roll back on itself to come out. I don't think 3-ply Bristol would do it, but 2-ply, which is the standard Bristol that most comic artists use and have used for years, goes through it no problem.
Oh, wow, that's pretty trippy. I love it.
I can actually show you what a layout looks like before I print it.
Yeah.
If you want. Let's see.
Or were you about to do a share screen?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, here we go. Oh, nice.
So that's what a layout looks like. And then you can see, like in this panel right here, the perspective grid that was set up. This is pretty much a showdown. This is a page from FirstMan. I've only got a few pages left, so this is all near the end of the book. And then in blue, it looks like that.
Oh, wow. The things you can do these days, man.
Yep. And you can kind of see in this bottom panel the perspective grid.
Yeah. So,
as well.
so it's actually the computer program that is helping you put in the perspective grid, or do
Well, it
you?
doesn't help. I mean, what it does is, I know different programs do different things with perspective grids. Oh, here's another one in blue. Different programs definitely do different things in regards to, I guess, laying out perspective grids. In Sketchbook Pro, it has a tab, and you can do 1 point perspective, but all it does is set the point, and you still have to draw all the individual lines to the point.
Oh, all right.
And then it has 2 point, and it shows the points. And for instance, if the points are really far apart, like they were in this panel right here,
Uh-huh.
then what I would do is I would just make it really small, and then it would show and this isn't Sketchbook Pro, this is Photoshop where I'd show you,
Uh-huh.
but it sets the line, and I move the horizon line wherever I want, and then I can put a point here and a point here, and then I just start drawing lines to those points.
All right, all right.
So
Cool. That's really cool. Do you find it much of a learning curve going from traditional to digital, or did you take it up pretty quickly?
oh no, there's definitely a learning curve, but I started doing the switch probably in 2008 or 2009 is
Oh,
when I got my first Cintiq tablet, and I got the smaller one, the little 13-inch one. It's still connected to a computer, but you basically would just set it on your lap.
right.
And, obviously that's all I could afford at the time.
Uh,
So it's been about 2008 since I've been kind of going back and forth. And then it's probably been about, I'd say, 3 years that I've really just been drawing mostly on the Cintiq and then printing it out, doing the hybrid type method
wow.
to it. Yeah.
Oh, you want to see something funny? You remember these?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what I had to start.
A Wacom.
Yeah.
I think it's like 6x9. It came with the pen.
Yep.
With I think it was 256 points of pressure and
Yep.
mouse.
I still know a guy that's all he uses to do his coloring. He just won't, no matter how, dude, I'm telling you, no matter, I've known him for like 20 some years. And I'm like, man, you got to make the switch. It'll be so much easier. And he's like, oh, I'm just used to holding a bar of soap in my hand. And I'm like, all right. But he doesn't do a lot of actual drawing. So it's just coloring. And for the longest time, I colored with, what you showed.
Yeah.
And, when you're doing coloring, it's definitely, it is easier with the Cintiq with an actual pen and stuff right on the screen. But, it's still not super hard using the mouse.
Right.
But I couldn't imagine trying to draw with a mouse. There's just.
Oh, yeah. Mouse drawing is tough.
Yeah.
I used to do that back in the Mac Paint days on the Mac SE. Belzette, welcome. Real fans won't go to Marvel and DC anymore. They follow the creators that care.
Well, follow me, Belzette. I appreciate it.
Indeed. Dang, that's huge. Both books sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The only reason I want an iPad now is for sketching. Welcome, Madam. And welcome, Simon Simpatier. Hello, everyone. Not only the right tools, but also works best for you. True.
Yeah. I mean, I use the same type of pencil I've used for 30 years, and same type of inking brush and stuff like that. But when I do real paper stuff, but there was a little learning curve because it's definitely slicker drawing on a screen. For my iPad, I was able to get a screen protector that has a matte finish to it, so it kind of feels like paper.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Yeah. So there's that, and then just you don't want to trap yourself into zooming in and out on the page, because when I first started doing it, I would blow up and do all this detail on a head, and then I'd print it out and the head was like an inch big. But on my screen, I can make it as large as I want it. And the problem is, you spend all this time, but then, like I said, you print it out, and it's you lose all that stuff. And I can tell with digital artists now in comics. So obviously, I still collect comics, and I can look at some digital artists, and you can tell where they spent a lot of time on like a small head in a panel, because there's just too much detail on it for the size that it's printed. And when it's reduced down, it closes up and gets a little muddy looking almost.
Oh, right.
See, and that's the thing when you're drawing on paper. If you're drawing a head on paper that's only an inch big, you know how much detail to put in because it's on paper, and you can't make it as big and small as you want.
True.
Whereas on the screen, like I said, you could take a head that's going to be printed out on paper an inch big, and you can make it 5-6 inches large and do all this detail. But it's kind of pointless. So I'm trying to get into a habit of not really enlarging. I set the page up, and it's 11 by 17 in proportion. And on the top of my Cintiq, right above the screen, that obviously you guys can't see, but right above the screen, I have tape marks that are 11 inches across. So I know when I make the page fit within those tape marks that's the size of the page as it would be on my desk.
Oh.
So I try not to enlarge it bigger than that, because I wouldn't be able to enlarge it on my desk, if that makes sense.
So your Cintiq is actually 11 by 17?
Oh, I've got the one that's 27 inches across diameter.
Whoa. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I've got the here I can show you with the webcam.
Whoa. Oh my gosh.
See, that's my
That's
hand.
big. Wow.
Yeah, and see, this one's like a desk because it angles. It has feet on the back, so it angles. So it's almost like working on my drawing table.
Yeah. Holy moly.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the first one I got was the one in 2008 that was only 13 inch across, which is just a little bit bigger than the iPad Pro. Because the biggest iPad Pro is 12.9, and the Cintiq was 13.8. So it was only like an inch bigger diagonally, screen-wise. But the reason I upgraded back in 2017 is because the Cintiq I had, the cord, because I kept moving it from sitting on my table to putting it on my lap and drawing, and that back and forth over 9-10 years, it still worked, but every now and then if you move the cord, the screen would go black.
Oh.
So I had to make sure that the cord, wasn't really moving or anything when I was working, so the screen would stay on. And I just got tired of it, so I was like, all right, it's time to upgrade. So,
No.
So I saved my pennies like a good little boy, and I upgraded to this big one. So.
That's pretty sweet. That is so huge.
Yeah.
That is cool. If I remember correctly, I think it was Graham Nolan I spoke with, who what he does is he's got his own Bristol board, and he scans it in, and then he pulls it up on his iPad or whatever tablet he uses, and then he can use that as his guidelines to reflect where the borders are, so he knows not where he cuts off.
Yeah, that's what I do. I have a piece of I took a piece of Bristol board that already had the blue lines on it, and I just scanned it in, and then just so everything was squared, I because a scan will very slightly warp stuff. I mean, it's so slight, but I'm so anally retentive OCD. I want to make sure it's perfectly square.
Yeah.
So all my pages, when I start, I open up a file called comic page template, and it has the blue line with all the little hash marks for the panel breaks. You know, the standard panel breaks, halfway, thirds, and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I know Graham, and I know Graham is solely just an iPad guy, and that's what he does. He works in the iPad program Procreate.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, he does it all on the iPad, and then he prints it out, and then he inks it traditionally.
What do you do to reassure yourself that you're squaring up the page to compensate for the very slight angle?
Well, there's guides in I'm sure other programs have them, but in Photoshop, there's blue guides that you can set. So I just drag those across, one for each side of the page vertically, then one for each side horizontally, and those are perfectly square. So once I do that, I can select the whole page, go to the transform function in Photoshop under distort, and then you can just adjust the corners ever so slightly to make sure it's perfectly square.
And then once you've done that, do you save that as a template and just use that for
Once I do that, I save that as the master comic book page file.
Nice.
And then whenever I open it to start a new page, the first thing I do is save it under a new name, and it's, you know, for instance, FirstMan issue, 1, page, 56 layout or whatever.
Cool. Yeah, Bowser, I was just going to ask about the screen protectors.
Yeah, I think they make one big enough for this Cintiq. I think somebody, a friend of mine told me they do. I just haven't looked into it enough because it's still a little slick. I mean, if anything, if I go from drawing on my iPad to directly, like, I'm drawing on my iPad, then 10 minutes, I'm done, and I throw this file in the Dropbox so I can grab it on my computer. And 10 minutes later, I'm on the computer. There's a definite difference in feel between the iPencil and the pencil for the Cintiq.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would think so. The matte finish comes with the Huion Canvas Pro.
Yeah.
Is that a Korean company, or
it's another tablet maker to draw on, like the Wacom Cintiq.
Yeah,
they're a lot. They cost. I tell you, when they first came out, I was a little hesitant, and obviously I don't have one because they came out after I got this, or they might have been out when I got this, but they were still in their infancy, and it was one of those things where even though it was literally like half the price, until you see people test it a lot, you kind of think to yourself, I'd rather pay double the price with something I know that's tried and true.
Mm-hmm.
But now I've seen so many reviews on this tablet that are really, really good reviews that if somebody asks, what should I get? I'm like, definitely try this. It's half the price, and everything I've heard says they're really good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if anything ever happened to mine, I could very well see switching to that other brand just from a cost benefit.
Right. And it's way cheaper price-wise and high quality. Sim uses a Huion Canvas Pro 22.
Yes, so that's a little bit smaller than what I have, but the price difference when I was shopping around between the 22, I think it was between 24 and 27 inch was just a couple $100, and for that I was like, I might as well just get the big thing. So,
gotcha. Less is more. I used to draw on graph paper way back in the day. Always set parameters to not surpass.
Yep.
Impressive. Procreate such a strange choice for a name.
I cannot even stand saying the name of that program for that very reason. Oh, what are you doing? Using Procreate right now? Doing a little Procreate. Oh, should I call you back? Not that kind. I'm drawing on my iPad. Come on, I wouldn't answer the phone if I was doing the other kind. It's just weird. It's such a weird name for a drawing program, Procreate. I mean, I haven't talked to anybody at Apple, but I'm assuming they were going for the, you're birthing your creation. I have no idea. But, you know, when you've got Sketchbook Pro, which literally, if I tell you I use a program called Sketchbook Pro, you know what it is.
Right.
It's like Clip Studio. I don't know why they changed the name from Manga Studio, because Clip Studio, I'm like, when I first heard it, I'm like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
I didn't realize I was using, because I've had the version I have. I got it when it was on a CD, so not even a download. So I ordered it and got it in the mail on a CD, and the box says Manga Studio Pro. And that's the version I still use. And then a few years ago, it switched over and they dumped that and just call it Clip Studio now. But I don't know. I don't understand the name of Clip Studio, at least with Manga Studio Pro. I know I can understand the name change, because that makes it sound like, oh, only if you're doing manga. Don't use this program if you're not. I mean, okay, here's an idea. Comic Book Pro? I mean, not that difficult to come up with a name.
Yeah. I always interpreted Procreate to be this is the software professionals use to create their masterpieces.
Sure. Then you could call it Create Pro.
Yeah. What about the gloves for drawing on tablets?
Oh, you mean, hold on now. This?
Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun. I've seen these. Obviously, I have one now. But for a while, I was like, who would use that? And I got a glove, just a regular lightweight glove, and I just cut off the fingers and used it. And I was like, oh, this does make a big difference. But then it started tearing apart. So this thing's only like $10. I've had it for a couple of years. It's sturdy, but it does make a difference on the screen.
Well, what kind of glove did you use? Is it just basic, like
before this?
A winter glove, or?
No, I got. You can go to like a hobby store and buy these real cheap white, just light fabric gloves, I guess people might use if they're, using glue or I don't know, something. And I just bought them because they were really cheap and just cut the fingers off.
Is this supposed to prevent you? Oh, go ahead.
You can get the cheap, they're not rubber, they're not latex, not like doctors use, but, just from like a grocery store used for doing dishes, you cut the fingers off those, but it's just, I mean, the main point is so you don't get the oil from your hand on the screen, and which still isn't a big deal because you can clean the screen. But I found that in the summer when it's hotter, my hand might get a little sticky and just not glide across the screen as nice.
Oh, okay. All right. Gotcha. I thought the whole purpose of gloves was to prevent smearing of your pencils.
That's the funny thing. I actually will use this every now and then too when I'm drawing on paper for that reason. So there's not as much smudging and stuff, because I use a HB pencil, which is kind of soft, and it can smudge up a little more.
Yeah. They only got good at the Canvas Pro model. They only got good. It was an internal conflict and the creator split up. Clip is the one that stayed and pushed the animation part more.
Huh.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree. Manga Studio was way better. Lol. Welcome, El Gargo. Thanks for the eggplant.
Nice.
Balzette says, always wondered if there was a benefit to use the glove.
Now you know.
Knowing is half the battle.
But I don't use it on the iPad because the iPad is so small that the side of my hand doesn't really touch the screen much. Just the pencil does. So it's really just on this big screen that I use it for.
Gotcha. Welcome, Edwin. The Ace launches January 31st. Hey, peeps. Sweet. Hey, wait a minute. Oh, there it goes. Too cool. Too cool for school. Let's get back. What? Oh, it opens in a new tab, doesn't it? There he goes. All right.
There he goes.
Now let's check out this promo trailer here.
Short and sweet, baby.
FirstMan. You know the drill. A college kid is imbued with great power and likes it. Penumbra has other plans and hand delivers him to Monarch, a fun 64-page action-packed comic book harkening back to the glory days of Marvel Comics, only on Indiegogo.
Man, talk about getting back to the Musclebound Heroes.
That's right. I mean, that's why I got into comics. When I grew up in the 80s, it was John Buscema, Sal Buscema, Mike Zeck. I got in. Well, not got in, but when I started reading comics as a kid, John Byrne, George Perez, Gil Kane, and Neil Adams, and it was the look of basically just drawing, the figure and then just drawing lines over the body. There were no wrinkles and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And, and that's what fascinated me about it, was just the human anatomy was just so fascinating to me, and how it works and how the muscles tie into each other. And, my favorite artist growing up drew the type of stuff that I do now and always have. So, I think it's fun. To me, it's more entertaining. And there are still artists that do that. It's not like, nobody at Marvel and DC don't draw superheroes that way anymore. They certainly do.
Right.
But there's also this more of a trend I see of drawing more realistic proportions with costumes that aren't so, I guess, form-fitting. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, to each their own. And I think if you're a kid coming up now reading comics, and you're somebody and you have the interest to draw comics for a living, you very well could go down that path because that's what you've seen, so you're influenced by what you grew up with. And this is obviously what I grew up with, and it's why I like to draw, and it's, it's fun.
Nice.
Thank you.
I love the Penumbra character. She's pretty cool looking. Yeah, I mean, I got into comics because of the escapism and the idealized anatomy and the skin tight costumes.
Well, that's just it. They're supposed to be. It's funny when I'm at a convention, which I haven't been in over a year now. Shocking. Who has? But I've had, I wouldn't say every convention, but I'd say at least a few times a year, somebody will come up and go, and it's, it's usually a woman, and that's fine, but she'll go, why are all the women always drawn so perfect, and with, the perfect hourglass and boobs and hips? And I just look at them and I go, for the exact same reason all the guys are drawn perfect. Because that's the thing that cracks me up. They don't see. I've never had a dude come up to me and go, why are all your guys drawn like they just walked out of a muscle magazine? I've never had that happen. But I will have women come up to me, and not a lot, but some come up. Like I said, it probably happens once or twice a year, so it's not a lot. And literally ask, why do all the women in comic books look like they just walked out of a Playboy or whatever, And I found the best responses for the same reason. All the men look like they walked out of a men's fitness magazine.
Yeah.
Because drawing, like you said, it's escapism. It's not supposed to be real world. It's fantasy. I mean, fantasy doesn't have to mean sword and sorcery. I mean, if there's a dude flying through the air, that's pretty fantastical, if you ask me, you know? So that's how I want to draw them. And it's like Monarch. I mean, look at that 4 shot of the 4 lined up. Luke Henry, who becomes Apollo, which is the FirstMan, Luke Henry's my height. He's 5'10". Apollo's 7 feet tall, Penumbra's 6 feet tall, and Monarch's 8 feet tall. You know, and I mean, you'd never see anybody built like Monarch walking around. Look how small that dude's head is. Well, who cares? I mean, that's one of the cool things I really liked about Endgame and Infinity War. If you really look at Thanos, dude is huge.
Yeah,
he
is.
His head's not in normal proportion to the rest of his body, because if it was, he wouldn't be intimidating. You know, you want to make these guys, and you know, Monarch's not an Earthling, so he doesn't have to be. You know, he's not from Earth. He can be totally jacked out.
Totally, yeah.
So yeah, I like doing the exaggeration, and I try to do a mix of, you know, people ask, what do you consider your style? And, you know, I always say it's stylized realism, because it's not realistic like, you know, Alex Ross or Brian Hitch or you know, guys like that. Those guys I call more realistic. Mine's I call it stylized realism, because I'm trying to do realistic looking anatomy, but play with the proportions of the figure and put that realistic anatomy on those proportions. You know, I grew up, you know, when I first got into comics, Jim Lee was on X-Men when I broke into comics. That's what he was working on. And Jim is I think Jim stylized realism too. And then, you know, in the mid 90s, artists like Joe Madureira got really, really popular, and Mike Rowingo and Humberto Ramos. And if you remember the mid to late 90s, almost everything at Marvel, they were pushing towards more of a cartoonier look. And I actually switched my style over on a couple jobs I was doing at Marvel at the time, because an editor asked me to. He's like, I got this one job for a character named Strong Guy, and Strong Guy is part of X Factor. You know, he's the really big dude that just has that little curl and those goggles. And he said, you know, can you change your style to make it more cartoony? Because that's the look we'd like to have for the book. And I said, yeah. So he's like, all right, I'm going to send you one page that we're going to print in a book with Strong Guy as just kind of like a one-off goof page, and let's use that. And if we think you nail it, we'll give you the job. So I did it, and they liked it. So I did 2 Strong Guy one. Well, one was a Strong Guy one shot called Strong Guy #1, and then we did a second one, but instead of calling it #2, they just rolled it into X-Men Unlimited, and it was an issue of X-Men Unlimited that came out. And then I did like an issue of X Factor, an issue of X Force, worked on some X-Men stuff, and it was all in that mid to late 90s, and it was all done in a cartoonier type style. And then when I went over and worked at CrossGen in Florida, that company, the guy that owns the company wasn't really into that, so I kind of slowly shifted back to the more stylized realism that I do now. And that's what I feel more comfortable doing anyhow. I mean, I like doing cartoony stuff. And, you know, when I went to the Joe Hubert School, Joe was all about, you need to be versatile. You need to be able to work in different styles, because, you know, we're training you here at the school to become a professional artist. And a professional artist doesn't mean you draw this way and only this way. What if you know, in comics, that's fine. You know, somebody hires you because of the sample pages you did, and you keep drawing that way. But I've also done work outside of comics, and sometimes people will be like, can you rein it in a little bit? You know, tone down the anatomy some. I want heroes, but not totally muscled up. Or, you know, can you make stuff a little more cartoony? So I've worked in a variety of styles, and it's good as an artist to be able to be fluid in different looks. It's better to be versatile.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good point. Hey, Wolverine, how's it going? Thanks for coming. And welcome, Black Rose Comics.
Hello, Black Rose.
That looks slick.
Thank you.
Snowflake heroes. Comic pros now don't understand that the heroes are supposed to be exaggerated and larger than life.
It's really, like I said, I don't think it's an edict that's being pushed down from above. Like, I don't think editors made this mental switch, and when they hired people, they were like, nope, too exaggerated, too superhero, we want more down to earth. Like I said, I think there was a subtle shift in what artists were doing, and those artists get hired, and then other young people that want to be artists are attracted to that style, so do it. I mean, the one thing I had noticed, and I've joked about, is, you know, the book How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, right?
Yes.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
Right. I've made jokes about how some of the, you know, in that book, there's basically John Buscema would show the boring way, and then he would show the quote unquote Marvel way.
Uh-huh.
And the funny thing is, in certain comics these days, coming out from like Marvel and DC, I flip through them and I go, that is literally the boring way. That is not the Marvel way. And you know, it's like, this dude's punching, and you know, in How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, I can show it with my hand, which is, if somebody's throwing a punch, you don't want their body up and down. And if you look at boxers, they're not like leaned over like this punching, but in comics, you can lean somebody over like that punching. You know, because what you're showing in comics is, or what you're trying to show in comics is a snippet of time, and the snippet of time that the artist chooses to draw should be should be like that in between frame. You know, it's like if you are taking a picture of a runner when they first start running, they might be really leaned over, and then once they get down the track some, you know, they are almost straight up and down again. You know, but when they first start out, they might start out like that and then start running like that. But if you're going to draw the Flash running, you're not going to draw them like that. You're going to draw them like that to really push the speed.
Right. That makes sense.
And then every character in the book that was above is going to have a old style Marvel Universe bio page, because I grew up loving that book.
I really enjoyed when they released those Who's Who's. So
I got them all.
Cool.
I still have the ones I bought as a kid, and then when they put them out in black and white in the essential editions, I still have that. The only thing I didn't buy, which I think came out last year, was the big omnibus that collects them all in the big fat hardcover. That's a little too pricey, and I've got the other stuff. So, but yeah, I love I can still remember going into a drugstore when I was a kid with my parents, and it had the comic spin rack, and seeing Marvel Universe official handbook of the Marvel Universe #1 with the yellow cover and Angel flying on it. And I was like, what's this? And I picked it up, and I was just like, oh my God, this is awesome. All these heroes just drawn looking so cool, and all their stats. And
yeah.
And I always wanted to do that. But I got into the business after they did that stuff. So now it's my world, baby. I can do what I want. So
yeah, totally.
I'm doing it for my book.
Yeah, it was definitely fun collecting those. So you were one of the lucky ones whose parents didn't throw away all their comics?
No.
Or sell them by accident?
No, in fact, when I went away to art school, I think when I went away to art school, I had probably 5 long boxes. So this is like an 18-year-old, you know, I was 18, and through collecting, I had 5 long boxes. So that's not really a lot. It's like 1,500 books.
Mm-hmm.
But my parents kept them because they knew I couldn't take them with me up to art school. 'Cause, I was living in basically a room that had my bed and my drawing table and a dresser for my clothes. So I didn't have the room for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I graduated art school, and when I moved out, my parents were like, "You're moving out. Take all your shit with you. Take your crap and take it. You're now moving out on your own. You're 21. You're an adult. Take all your crap and get it out of the house." So, and now I can angle the camera. That's how many boxes I have.
Oh my god.
That's nothing.
Dang.
That's nothing.
I think that's more than I've ever had. I think I've had 9 or 10 long boxes.
15, 16, 17, 18, 19. It's about 21.
Wow. So
Because there's on the side are short boxes, and short box. 2 short boxes make a long box. So it's about 21. That's nothing. A friend of mine has like 200 in his house.
oh my gosh. Dang.
Yeah.
How do you
His room is as big as mine, except instead of like, this is my office, his room is literally, his whole back wall of the room is just the boxes lined up, stacked, and stuff.
is he also a comic book artist?
Nope. He's just a collector, and he's a certified grader, so he can do grading of stuff. And he's a big time collector. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And he does shows and whatnot.
Balzette says, too much grounded in reality and self-inserts ruins comics, and yet still trying to have a guy that shoots lasers out of his eyes.
Well, I mean, it's true, because I think when you see it, Marvel, when it came to the designs from Iron Man, the first movie, well, and even the first Spider-Man with Sam Raimi, till now, all the costumes have been great, but they work because they're making them functional for reality.
Yeah.
If you look at Captain America, First Avenger, look, when he comes out on stage in the actual comic book costume, and he's just promoting Captain America and all that stuff, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But in Avengers, the first Avengers movie, when Coulson's like, I made a few upgrades, that costume works.
Uh-huh.
Because it has some seams and stuff, but it's the essence of, it's Captain America, it's Thor. But just because they work on screen on a realistic person, to me, doesn't mean you go, okay, now I'm going to draw it, that exact way. I think you lose something in translation.
Right.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the live action? I guess it's Teen Titans, where like
Titans, just Titans on HBO Max Titans. Or whatever. I just started watching it because I didn't subscribe to DC Universe, but now that it came to HBO Max, I literally watched the first 2 seasons in the course of like 2 weeks, and I love it. I think it's great. I think they learned from Marvel with the costumes, which is don't shy away from the superhero costume, just make them functional for the real world, and realize that in the world you're creating for DC, and this goes for Marvel as well, for their live action stuff, you're literally creating this universe where people believe these people exist, and they don't look at it like we would if we saw somebody running down the street like that. We'd be like, well, that's impossible. It's goofy. But they're creating this world where it already happens, and it's real, and it exists. So people don't second guess it, and they don't question it when they see it, because it's acceptable in that world they created. Same with The Boys. If you look at the costumes in The Boys, they're really accurate with the comics, and they look great. you know? So I think Titans is one of the best shows.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because I was most thrown. I haven't seen it myself, but I was most thrown off by these still images of Starfire and stuff, especially when the series first started.
So was I. So was I. But I tell you what, in the first season, well, have you seen that for season 3 they showed what her costume's going to look like?
Yeah, I saw concept art. I don't know if how close they stayed to that concept art though.
Well, season 3, I mean, they're filming it now, so they haven't shown any stuff from filming. But if they stick to the concept art they showed, I think it looks really good. But I will say, in the actual show, in the first season, she does use her powers. Spoiler alert: her eyes go all green, and she gets more of an orange tint to her, her skin and her hair, to kind of tie it in.
Right.
So because I was like you when I first saw Starfire, I was like, what the hell is that? But when you watch the show, I think they do a good job of making sense of it.
Oh, good. Did you watch any of the CW series? Arrow, Flash, Supergirl?
Oh, I watched them all.
All right.
Ever since Smallville, I was there for Smallville seasons 1 through 10 or 11. Yeah, I watched them all. Supergirl, I dropped off a few years ago. It just lost my interest, and my daughter is kind of like my comic book watching buddy, and she reads comics too. But she goes to all the movies with me, and
that's cool.
Drops off of something, and she dropped off of Supergirl. So I was like, yeah, I think I'm there with you. But we liked Flash. We watched Arrow to the end. I thought Stargirl was really good.
I've heard good things about Stargirl, and
Stargirl was really good. It was fun. Yeah, we watched all that stuff.
And I think people generally like Flash and Daredevil.
Oh, Daredevil was great.
Let's see here. Wolverine has a question. What font did you use for the OHOTMU entries?
And that is a very good question. Bear with me, since I still have Photoshop open. I might be able to open it and tell you, because right off the top of my head, I don't know. But I think. Oh wait, hold on. I think I'll be able to tell you in a second. Let's see. Oh, nope, that's locked. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm going to guess that it was, 1 second. I got to actually get the fonts open. Let's see. So 2 things. There's an actual font. This wasn't it, but there's an actual font called Marvel I found.
I'm sorry.
But the one I use for this, I believe, is no, that's not it. Damn, I don't remember what I used. I was going to say there's a font called Myriad Pro, and I thought it was Myriad Pro, but apparently it's not. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know, but I'm going to have to figure it out because I actually still have to do the bio pages for the other characters. So I'm going to need to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it matches.
Exactly.
So yeah, sorry about that.
It has to work in the universe, not some idiot sniffing internet gas. Of course, the costume looks stupid when Cap first comes out in that comics costume. They intentionally designed these comics faithful versions to look stupid. It's disingenuous as hell, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think if so, when he first came out in First Avenger wearing that costume on stage, one, it was made out of, you could tell it was made out of cloth, right? Like cotton or something.
Yeah.
Whereas if they made that same costume out of the same material that they made his costume in Avengers out of,
Right.
the Coulson upgrade, so the same material, but the same look as the one on stage, it would have looked a million times better. It would have looked a million times. So part of it was the fabric they used as well. So a lot has to do with the fabric and stuff. And I thought they did a great job with Daredevils. So
Wolverine disagrees about Titans.
I love Titans. I think Titans is good. Oh, what else? Swamp?
About that too. It's a nope. Stargirl.
Okay, there you go.
Good.
I watched Swamp Thing. I thought Swamp Thing was pretty good when it came out in the CW, and they ran the 10 episodes, which sucks because the 10th episode, which was the end of season 1, did have a cliffhanger, but it's not coming back. So you're just like, why even show it? I mean, I know why they did, because with COVID, they had to throw something in that time slot in the fall. So they figured, well, let's get Swamp Thing out there. But at the same time, you're just like, man, that hurt.
I kept hearing that it was getting good reviews from, fans, but they ended it up so soon. It was like early on the chopping block for whatever reason.
Yeah. I think they cut a couple episodes too, because I think it was supposed to be a 13 episode commitment. They cut it down to 10.
Oh, yeah. And now it's totally canceled, right?
As far as I know, yeah. Yeah.
At least Arrow wasn't destroyed from wokeness.
Yeah, that's true.
It's such a simple font, but a long-time font lover, I wanted to get as close to matching the original font as close as possible. And that looks very close.
Cool.
Man, costume's terrible. I don't
God, I hope you're not talking about mine. Mine now.
I think he's referencing the Captain America one.
Yeah, I know. Captain America.
CW is the channel.
Captain America is like literally my favorite Marvel character. First comic I bought, always favorite non-flying, because I like characters that can fly. But as well. But Cap's my favorite non-flying Marvel character. And I gotta admit, when he came out on stage in First Avenger, I was like, oh. Like, oh, good Lord.
You remember how in the X-Men movies, it might have been in X2 or X3, I think, where they were in the jet, and they they made a quick reference to the comic book accurate uniform, the yellow and black.
Yeah, but then did you? Was it in one of the Wolverine movies, or was it just online somewhere where they showed like a briefcase open with like Wolverine's helmet in it? It was like comic accurate, but it had, it wasn't just a pullover cloth. It had some weight to it and stuff. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it was that.
It was in one of the movies, wasn't it?
It was in that same scene. It was either in one of the X-Men movies or in the Wolverine. No, I think it was an X-Men movie.
That looked awesome.
Yeah, it actually did look pretty cool.
Yeah.
CW is the channel where shows go to die. Swamp Thing.
See, this dude's got a point that I never even realized. I didn't realize that was supposed to be the Phantom Stranger and Swamp Thing. I know exactly who he's talking about, but I didn't know that would be the Phantom Stranger.
I don't know the property of Swamp Thing well enough. It never was something that drew me in, so I never followed it.
I've been a Swamp Thing fan since he was created back in the day, Bernie Wrightson and stuff. So, I remember watching the first Swamp Thing movie from the early '80s, and he did a good job with the character design for him being all practical effects in the TV show.
Gotcha.
That sounds right.
That line was in X-Men 1. The briefcase with the Wolverine costume was a cutscene from the Wolverine movie.
Sounds right.
Oh, okay. I can't keep them straight anymore. Swamp Thing never needed a reboot. They're just completely out of ideas at this point.
I'm gonna have to go. She's talking about comics at this point, not the show, because the show wasn't really a reboot. So maybe she's talking about the comic.
Let's see. So, yeah, I like that. It's so legible. It's so easy to read.
Yeah.
On these bios.
And then we've got your art. That desk.
Now, weren't you on? Didn't you go on? Was it John Malin's show?
No, I haven't been on John's yet.
Oh, okay. All right.
I want to. I haven't been on it yet, though.
I thought I saw you in an interview talking about this, and you were talking about how this is like an homage to some of the other books where the story was introduced by the artists themselves.
Yeah, Joe Hubert used to do it. Hold on, let me see something. Let's see if I got lucky. I've got a spin rack next to my. Oh, look at that.
Oh my gosh.
Right there. It's a homage to that.
Oh, yeah. I remember when they did that. That was cool.
Love it. So, yeah. So that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. I love that stuff. It's, that is what, to me, makes comics fun, is being able to do stuff like that. And, if this campaign is successful enough for me to do a second one, which is my hope, am I going to do it in the second one? Probably not. I just want to introduce this story, being my first one and whatnot, and reintroduce it, the people to FirstMan, and I thought, it'd be cool to do it that way. So my chair keeps sliding down. It's annoying too, because this wasn't a cheap chair. I've had it over a year, but still, that gas thing shouldn't be losing air or whatever's happening.
Yeah, really. Maybe you got lemon.
Yeah, I hope not.
True artistry.
Thank you. Yeah, so some interior pages, got to show those. I mean, the book is, so everybody knows, the book is 95% done.
Dang.
And I'm still, the coloring's not finished yet. I'm getting stuff colored now. The coloring's being worked on by a guy I'm working with. But the my art on the book is 95% done. I've only got like 4.5 pages left, and then I'm done. So.
Wow, nice.
Yep.
And are you literally doing everything on this book? Well, obviously it's your story, it's your characters. You're doing everything from pencils to inks to colors and lettering.
I've got a guy, a friend of mine I went to the Hubert School with, is doing the lettering. He's a letterer in the comic book business now. He's been doing it for as long as I've been. He's been in business as long as I have, and he's worked for everybody. His name's Steve Dutro. And then the colorist is Priya Pillai. He's in India, and I'm sure I butchered his name because I think I always do, because I've never heard it. I've only read it.
Oh.
But he's from India. And then I'm working with a good buddy of mine I've known for over 30 years on the scripting part of it. Some story stuff. Most of the story stuff I did, but then the scripting with the dialogue and stuff, I'm working with somebody else that I think is just better at that than I am.
So, as a comic pro, it seems like there's a tendency for, once you develop close relationships with fellow artists or writers or colorists, that, professionals will tend to team up, and like a given inker will, want to only be colored by a particular individual. Are you sometimes that way, where who makes your artwork pop, and
Oh yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
nice across the colors doing this stuff. Who colored the previous campaign? That was the first stuff we did together, and I just stumbled across his portfolio. He actually emailed me, and no, wait, an artist emailed me with his sample pages, just say, hey, I know you work in the business. Here's what some of my stuff looks like. If you have any pointers, blah blah blah. The guy's stuff was really good. Now, I'm not in a position to hire anybody though, from a drawing standpoint, because I do that. But I wrote him back, and I told him, I said, dude, I think your stuff is really good. Just keep at it. And then I asked him, I said, but who did the coloring? Because the coloring is really nice, and I might need a colorist. So he hooked me up with the guy that's doing this coloring, and I sent him a couple things to color as a sample, and he did a great job. So we did the first project together, and there's always back and forth. Even at this stage, even though he's colored a lot of stuff over me, there's a vision I have in my head, and no one's ever going to see that because it's in my head, and I can't get it out unless I color it myself. So, I give some color notes. Other than that, I pretty much let them go wild with what they want to do, and then when it comes back, I'll have notes on every page, but usually not a ton, and send them back the notes, and that's about it.
cool.
And, over time, the notes kind of get less and less because they just get repetitive.
Right.
So as long as the creator you're working with is listening and actively taking into account everything you're saying, then the gap closes to where you hope to get to a point where it's just like, yeah, that looks great, thanks, next.
Yep. Those clouds, though, damn, those are good.
Yeah, and that stuff, I'll be honest. Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah,
That I'll be honest, I know how to color. I've colored stuff in Photoshop, and I've colored pinups and private stuff, and some stuff I do outside of comics. I usually color myself. One, I'm really slow. So that's one reason I don't color my own work, because I just don't do it enough. I'm not fast enough as guys that do it all the time. And two, there's just certain things that I teach myself how to do, like those clouds, but it would take me longer to teach myself, and like I said, I don't have the time in the first place, and this guy's doing a great job. So
nice. More interiors.
yep.
And she's a villain, right?
She is a little bit of both. There's basically the one true hero, which is FirstMan in yellow, the one true bad guy, which is Monarch, the real big dude, and then she kind of rides that thin line of hero villain type. Vigilante, I guess.
The name FirstMan, is it some kind of reference to he being somehow like among the first man on Earth?
Kind of. So like I said, his name is, so there's, the whole gist of the story is there's these 10 essences that are scattered throughout the universe. And each essence inhabits being on a different planet. So however many planets are in the universe, 10 of the planets spread far and wide. There's one being, for Earth, you'd say person, other planets, a being that this essence inhabits. Kind of like the Green Lantern's, the ring searches out a specific individual from every planet. This essence searches out a specific person. So the essence that came to Earth searched out and inhabits this college kid, Luke Henry, who becomes Apollo, the first man for Earth. Whereas Monarch's goal is to capture all 10 of the essences into himself to become basically all powerful. And if he does that, then, I guess, forget about it. He's all powerful at that point. And, the thing is, he has to be stopped from getting the last one from Luke Henry on Earth, is the basic gist. And then Penumbra has a specific tie to that essence that inhabits Luke Henry. And so she plays a part in it as well.
Not sure who that is. Oh, dang. I already jumped all the way. Is that Screech?
No, he means Shriek.
Say again?
Go down a couple. He corrected himself in the comments. And then, I love growing up the old Hostess ads from comics. So I did my own Hostess parody ad.
Yeah, that's funny.
I love those things. So I tried to do a style reminiscent of not the 90s, but the 70s, 80s, specifically like a John Buscema type style with my drawing, of course. And my buddy that's doing the writing, scripting for the book, wrote this ad for me. And so I got that in the book because, like I said, I love that stuff.
You can enjoy a delicious plate of roasted mango flavored frosted fruit pies. And I always loved how the product placement was so accurate.
Oh yeah.
Was that hand drawn, all the pies, or did you make a...
Not the labels. The labels and stuff weren't. So no, those were all done with Photoshop and stuff. Yeah.
Excellent work. I love puns. Oh my gosh.
Yep, it's fun stuff. Like I said, it's my book, my world. I can play.
Oh yeah. It's like a female anti-venom. Oh yeah, fruit pie. Yeah, that's classic right there. Shriek. Hey, welcome, Christine Venner. Thanks for coming.
Hello, Christine.
Shriek was a character I was thinking of. She's basically Carnage's equivalent to Harley Quinn, I guess. Oh.
Sure. That is one world of the Marvel Universe, or one area, because I still buy comics. But Venom is one area of the Marvel Universe I've never really gotten into that much. So I know Venom, and I know Carnage.
Right.
And I know there's a crap ton more of the offshoots, but I don't know anything about them.
Yeah, I don't. I never followed that area either. Back in a minute. I'm going to check the campaign page.
Please do.
This was freaking cool. I
got my buddy Bart Sears to do a variant cover.
All right.
So.
Now, what is this? Is this 1.2 as in issue 1 2/10, or is it
just 1.2? So basically, FirstMan was actually a book that I put out through Image in 1997, and I never finished it. It said to be continued. So this is this reprints that, but it's all remastered. So it's all recolored. It's all rescripted. It's not, and the whole book's not a reprint, just like 20 pages. And out of the book because I wanted to show that first story. Because I mean, a comic is hard to find.
I bet.
All that art has been recolored. It's all rescripted. So even if you bought the first one and still have it, it's going to be totally different when you actually read it. It's going to be totally different looking because all the coloring's been redone. I went in and I redrew panels and stuff. And then, of course, I finished off the story with 30-some new pages of art in color. So that's what I'm working on or have been working on. So I figured instead of calling it 2, because it's not really a 2, it's a 1.2.
I gotcha. We used to play the Maximum Carnage game.
I don't even know what that is. I'm so old. I never played games. What's up, Randy?
Welcome, Randy Siplon. Hey, guys.
Yeah, I've never been a game player.
I'm a gamer, but
the last console we had was a Wii, and we had that more because of my kid. But before the Wii, the last console I had was an original Atari when I was a kid in the 80s.
You mean like a 2600?
Whatever the first Atari was, it had Pong with those big cartridges you slid in. That was the last video game thing I had because I'm not a gamer. So
I never owned that one, but I did own Atari Pong, and it was literally just Atari Pong, and you plugged it. It had hardwired cables that go to the back of your TV.
Yep.
And it had the 2 dials on it, and you had like 3 or 4 different modes of Pong.
Yeah, pretty much.
That was quite fun.
That was it. That's exactly what it is.
So you were kind of getting into this. Christine's asking, so this is kind of a remake of the original that you created?
Yeah, I'm finishing it. Like I said, the original said to be continued. And, that was 23 years ago, and time just goes by like that, in the blink of an eye. And I just thought, I'm not getting any younger. I want to finish this. There's no better time than now. So I went back in and I finished off the story. I redid. I had all the original art, so I took the original art and rescanned it and redrew things I didn't like. I was 23 years old, and then I went in and drew 30-some new pages to finish the story.
Did you find that,
like the stuff that you showed in the beginning, the colored pages up above are a mix of old with all the new coloring and totally brand new? But that's why I went in and redrew some stuff so it would look like what I do now.
Right. All right. Nice. Cool.
Yeah, it is.
Late 70s, early 80s proto gaming memories.
Yeah, I can't remember what else was on that stupid Atari. Exactly. To be continued. Later. Now, as I say now, and it's and the thing is, it's like I said, 64 pages, square bound, not stapled, is the plan, and it's a self-contained story, so it concludes. But that doesn't mean there can't be a second one. And if I were to do a second one, I would do basically the same thing. I would do another self-contained story, kind of like what Brian Polito does with Lady Death. He just puts out these 48-page self-contained Lady Death stories, once or twice a year.
Yep.
So that's kind of the model that I want to do. Are you going to have the comic on newsprint? No. Just reading a comment.
Oh, all right. I was wondering.
Yeah, no, it won't be on newsprint. No. As much as I like newsprint, when you do rendered color, not flat color, it doesn't appear as well as nice on newsprint. And the thing is, people have a misconception where they think, comics would be cheaper if you would just print them on newsprint again. But it's actually not the newsprint that is the cost of comics being more expensive, the paper choice. Newsprint can actually be the same cost or a little more expensive than the typical paper that is used in comics now.
Really?
Because it's not as much anymore. So it's not worth it. There's not a big cost savings to newsprint. I mean, if there was a huge, huge cost savings to newsprint, I'd think about it, but there's not. So there's no point. And if you want to, obviously compete with the other stuff that's out there, you want to use the same type of quality paper. The Hostess ad looks like it's on newsprint, and it'll look that way in the comic because I have a newsprint texture paper that I apply in Photoshop to give it that look.
Oh man.
So that's just like a filter. I basically, not a filter, but yeah, I literally have a file called newsprint texture. And once the whole page is finished, I apply that file over top of everything to give it that look.
Yeah, that's cool. It still cracks me up every time I see it.
I tell you, I would love to draw a whole book that way. It's fun.
Really?
I'd love to draw a whole book that way. I just don't know, because it's so retro. I don't know if it's a good idea. You know what I mean? Once again, if I was a millionaire and it didn't matter, sure, I draw a whole book that way because it doesn't matter. But so I can't. So.
Wait, you mean to say you're not a millionaire?
No. I'm a few dollars shy. No, I'm not. And then there's a 40-page program book, which basically is a behind-the-scenes making of. And
nice.
One of the book is going to be different shots of FirstMan by different artists I know that are shown. And then the back of the book, the rest of the book, is going to be behind-the-scenes stuff of page layouts and things like that.
Wow, nice. I like this piece too a lot.
Thanks. Well, it's Adam Hughes, so can't go wrong.
Yeah. Wow. All kinds of. Yeah. I like the program book because I love seeing this, behind the scenes stuff and seeing how you get from pencils to inks and to colors.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, as an artist, and I know it's not just an artist-driven thing because I've run into lots of people that like that behind-the-scenes stuff. But specifically, myself and every artist I'm friends with, they'd actually rather look at that, layouts and rough drawings more than the thick stuff.
Yeah.
Because when you see the layouts and stuff, you can really get in. It's a doorway into the process, and the finished drawing is not really a doorway in because it's the finished drawing.
Mm-hmm.
But, like the page when I was sharing the screen where you saw the underdrawing, the perspective grid and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You get that sense of, that's what they go through to get to there. You know what I mean? It's like being able to go to a construction site and just sit back and watch them build a house. And you see everything that goes into it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Eric loves newsprint. Throws him back to the Man of Steel, John Byrne run.
Love that stuff. Love it. The smell of it too.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a huge. I'm big into the physical. I love comic books and graphic novels that are physical over digital.
Oh yeah, same here. Same here.
I like the smell of it, being able to touch it, and it's easier for me, being nearsighted to read comics and be able to dart around the page and look however I like. Whereas with technology, it seems like it's a pain in the rear, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've read some stuff, you know, digitally, of course. Especially, you know, like I said, I still buy comics, and with every Marvel book, it comes with the digital code, and I'm not going to take advantage of something that's free. So I have an account, and I've got all that stuff, but I rarely look at them because I'd rather just hold a book and look at it that way. So.
Yep. Welcome, Bristolian Dave. Thanks for coming. All right,
Yeah.
Members. Thanks for dropping links, mods. Back
Thank you.
Man.
Thank you.
Let's show this campaign some love.
Please.
Almost no one would understand the print style.
It's true. I showed my kid a book on newsprint that I did when I came, you know, when I broke into the business. All the comics I drew came out on newsprint. It was before, you know, the nice paper and stuff. And, you know, my daughter's 17, and I show her some of that stuff, and she's like, this looks so old. That's what she said. I tried to get her to watch the original Superman movie from 1970, you know, with Christopher Reeves. And she's like, oh, my God, that's so old. So I was like, okay. You love Spider-Man. She loves Spider-Man. I'm like, well, let's watch the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man from the early 90s or 2000s, you know, from 2000. She goes, ew, it's before I was born. I'm not going to watch that. She won't even watch that. She won't watch Batman stuff Christopher Nolan did because it's too old.
Oh, my God.
You got to look at it. She was like, what year was that? 2000. That was before Iron Man, I think.
Oh, my God.
And my daughter was born in 2003, so she was like 2 or 3 years old when that stuff came out. So she's like, ew.
Oh, my gosh, that's too funny.
Yeah. Even, like I said, she's, you know, she knows my work, obviously, and she's seen, you know, she sees what I do. And like I said, I can show her a book that came out that I did a couple years ago on fancy paper, you know, just modern. And she's like, oh, that's nice. And then you show her a book I did 30 years ago that's on newsprint. She's like, ew.
Dad, why are you so old?
Yeah, any parent gets that, that's for sure.
Yeah. Is this newsprint Photoshop texture available, or is it something Andy made himself and keeps under lock and key?
No, you know what I actually did? I Googled newsprint texture, and I found an image of newsprint that was large enough for me to use. And once you do that, I saved it as a JPEG. And when I open it up and apply it over the page as the final top layer, you just have to adjust the layer settings so it, you know, it fits right. So you have to adjust the layer set. Basically, I mean, I know my settings now because I've used it before, but when I first did it, I would look at an actual comic book, newsprint comic book next to it, my desk, and I would adjust the settings until it looked on screen like that printed newsprint comic book did. So no, it's just a newsprint. Like I said, Google search newsprint texture for paper. Or you can do that, or if you have a pad of newsprint, you know, you go to an art store, buy a pad of newsprint. I mean, you're wasting money on the whole pad, but buy a pad of newsprint and just scan in a blank page of newsprint.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, same thing.
I don't know why I didn't even think to do that. But yeah, that's a good point.
I think I picked it up from, I want to say I picked it up from Eric Larson. So Savage Dragon is one of the only books I buy monthly still. I still buy comics every week, but month to month, Savage Dragon is like the consistent. Other books come and go with like story arcs and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I know Eric did a thing on Facebook, on his Facebook page years ago, on how to give that old feel, that old 80s like comic feel, because he did a couple stories in Savage Dragon that were supposed to take place back in that time period in the 70s and 80s. And so to give it that feel, he wanted to have the newsprint look. So he gave a little tutorial, and I think that's where I got the technique from. It's been a while. So, and then you just kind of, once you get a technique, you go, oh, that's cool. And then you kind of play with it to make it work for, whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm. FirstMan needs to be on some really nice glossy paper stock.
Oh, it will.
It will.
It will.
Just $1 million shy of being a millionaire.
Well, the Powerball in Mega Millions is this week. So if everything goes my way come Friday, billionaire, baby, billionaire.
Is it up
if
to
everything
that?
goes my way, I will cancel this campaign, and everybody that backed it, I'll just send you a copy. If I win that money.
Yeah, seriously. All those different interpretations of Apollo is awesome. I agree.
Thank you.
I backed the tier that has the program book included.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to have the program book. Christina's backer number 115. Right on.
Right on. Thank you. Good number.
Hey there, Dave. Bristolian Dave. Andy, would you consider selling the original art pages?
So when I got into the business, when I was in Hubert School, Joe Hubert would always say, and I had Joe I was lucky. The school was 3 years. I had Joe for 2. After I left the school, he taught a couple more, 2 years, and then he backed down to just teaching 1 year. And Joe would always say, don't sell your stuff. And everybody would be like, why not? It's just extra money. He goes, trust me, keep it. Don't sell it. Don't rely on it for income. So I got into the business in 91. I drew comics. I sold some stuff, sold original art. And around 1995, I think I was like, you know what? I'm not going to sell any more stuff. So I stopped selling my original art that I got back. Because, when you work with an inker, the inker gets 1/3 of the original art and the penciler gets the other 2/3. And then when you do your own pencil and inks, you just, keep it all. So I stopped selling my stuff probably 25 years ago. And I do commissions, I do con sketches, I do sketch covers, blank sketch covers. But when it comes to the actual interior pages, I don't sell that stuff. So that was a long way to get around to saying, no, I don't.
So, I mean, oh, man. Someone tried to send me a spam call.
I figure, once I'm off this mortal realm, my daughter can decide what to do with the stuff, and if she wants to make a bonfire, have at it.
Well, I mean, what exactly was the reasoning behind it? Is it because it'll be significantly worth more down the road as your career?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what it's worth now. So,
okay.
So the other piece of advice Joe gave in the Hubert School that I adhere to was, when we get paid in comics, you get paid a page rate. So you don't get paid, everything. This is the typical way. There's always different types of smaller deals, but the typical way with most comic book companies is they hire you, and then they give you a page rate, And the big reason behind that is, let's say you're drawing a 20-page book, and let's say for some reason you only get 8 pages done, and then you flake off or something happens, you get hurt. Well, then they can easily go, okay, you did 8 pages, 8 times this is what we owe you, you're paid. They bring on another artist that has to do the other 12 pages. He's going to get paid 12 times whatever his page rate is. And Joe would always say, you should always live off your page rate, not expect royalties or sales of original artwork, because royalties can come and go. You know, they can go up, they can go down, they can go up, they can go down. And in the heyday of the comic book, the heyday of the 90s, when comics were selling, you know, millions of copies and hundreds of thousands of copies, I know guys that were getting really nice royalty checks. But the problem is they always expected them. So they didn't save them. They included that into like their yearly income. So then when the royalty checks started going down, they had to try and pick up more work to pick up for that lack of income from the royalties. And I also know guys that would always rely on selling their art every month to help pay bills and add that to their income. But if you run out of art, or if you don't work for a while, you don't have a lot of art, so eventually the art sales could go down. And, you know, honestly, if you're not one of the huge artists like a Jim Lee or you know, there's only a handful of really top big name artists who could basically sit down, draw a sketch in an afternoon, throw it up on eBay, and make a couple grand. You know, and Jim Lee's one of them. Adam Hughes could do that. Kevin Nolan could probably do that. You know, there's a few artists that can sit down, do a drawing, pop it out there, and sell it for a ton of cash. And if you're not one of those guys, which most of us honestly aren't, and you just don't want to rely on that money. But what you can rely on is your paycheck, and your paycheck is what you get for drawing a book. So if that's all you're relying on to live off of, then you're never living above your means. And either A, you can take royalty money and save it, invest it, you know, whatever. But, and, you know, you could splurge too. You could be like, oh, I got a nice royalty check. I'm going to go buy this because I've wanted it. But don't rely on it, you know, and that's the mindset I've always had. So I've never relied on, and I got royalties in the early 90s and 90s for working on stuff. And then they eventually went away because the comic industry, you know, took a hit. And I never relied on selling my artwork for income. So when I said, I don't want to sell it, I'd rather just keep it. And this was, you know, 25 years ago. My daughter's only 17, so it was way before we had her. So it wasn't like, I'm keeping my art for my kid. I didn't even have a kid. I just thought, yeah, I'm just going to keep it. I'd rather just keep it.
Mm.
There is something to be said for scarcity, and who knows, maybe in 10 or 15 years, I'll decide to sell it, and then at that point, I'll either do it myself or I'll talk to an art dealer just to get an idea of what it could be worth, and we'll see.
All right.
You know,
cool.
maybe somebody will come along and be like, I want to do a big artist edition book featuring your art. And it's like, no problem. It's all back here.
Or you can make the big coffee table book yourself if you wanted to, and really.
Yeah. I mean, Walt Simonson doesn't sell his stuff. I'm no Walt Simonson, but just saying, Walt's a guy that doesn't. Terry Austin, you know, fantastic inker. I told you, inkers only get a third of a book that they work on. So he would generally get 7 pages from every book he worked on. He doesn't sell his stuff. So he still has a ton of X-Men pages he inked over John Byrne. And if you look up what an X-Men page goes for from John Byrne and Terry Austin could basically put a page up every 6 months and never have to work. Depending on his lifestyle, I should say. I don't know what his lifestyle is, but.
So were you, from your work at DC, I don't know if Marvel ever paid royalties, but from your work.
Yeah, Marvel did.
No, did they? All right.
Yeah.
So these were based on characters you created from scratch?
Royalties are based on, well, yeah, some royalties, there's 2 different deals. I never really created any characters to get royalties. Like, you know, Rob Liefeld has a deal with Marvel for Deadpool that he made 30 years ago. You know, same with Cable and whatever. But the royalties I'm talking about, there's royalties on the amount of books that are sold. If a comic sells a certain amount, and it's different for both companies, I think. I know it was. So if a comic book sells a certain amount, then royalties kick in, and the writer gets a certain percentage, the penciler gets a certain percentage, the inker gets a certain percentage, and so on and so forth. So in the early 90s, when books were selling crazy, royalties were flying around everywhere. And then as the industry started to slow down and eventually take a little crash and burn, royalties just went.
Mm.
Now royalties these days are really harder to come by because the books just don't sell like they did, in the early 90s. And as far as I know, it's been a while for me, but as far as I know, the royalty structure on the sales of books hasn't changed that drastically. So, so it just depends. That's right, sniffing comics, baby. I do that. My wife is like, "That is disgusting. Why do you do that?" I'm serious. I come home because I still hunt for old comics and stuff when I go to like little conventions just to shop. Not every convention I go to, I'm a guest. So I'll go to like conventions that are in town that I can just drive to. They're like one-day shows that are just comic book dealers. And I'll just go to look around for back issues and stuff. I'll come home, sit down, crack one open, and give it another sniff. And my wife is like, "Oh, that's so disgusting." I take her into a used bookstore because I love used bookstores. I take her into a used bookstore and she's just like, "Oh God, this is giving me a headache. I'll see you outside."
Oh, dang. And then you spend the entire day in the bookstore.
So then when we go to a mall and she drags me into an Ann Taylor loft, I'm like, "All these clothes are giving me a headache. I'll be outside."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't have that old comic book smell in this department store. I'm feeling kind of weird.
In this Macy's, there's no old comic book smell.
Screw Toby. Show her the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man.
Oh, she would never watch that. You remember that? That dude was like senior in college looking, if I remember right, with the longer hair and stuff. Man, that guy cannot pull off. Well, I think was he a college student working at the Daily Planet? Because he wasn't a high school guy.
I don't remember, but he did look considerably older.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He looked like he was early college.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was working for the paper, the Daily Bugle, as a regular photographer.
Yeah.
Full time.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I'm thinking.
My dad had the entire George Reeves Superman show on VHS tapes he recorded them on, and would have me and my brothers watch them while he worked. And that is how I was introduced to Superman.
Yeah, that's good stuff. It's good stuff.
I love the smell of comics in the morning. Special clap for anyone that gets that movie line.
Man, love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Yeah, really. I'm gonna run to the store now. Comics smell better than napalm.
They won't kill you, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, fact.
Napalm will just take you out.
I love Deadly Duo that Andy drew back in the day for Image.
Yep, that was good. That was one of my favorite. That was the break Eric Larson gave me. So I buy Savage Dragon monthly because one, I really like the book, and two, I'm loyal to Eric. He hooked me up with my first gig at Image, and it was an issue of Vanguard, actually, that miniseries. A different artist drew every issue, and then after that, it was Deadly Duo. So I have great recollection of Deadly Duo.
Nice. Are the shelves behind you all filled with comics?
Trade paperbacks, hardcovers.
Wow.
Comics in the boxes, trade paperbacks, and hardcovers. Back there.
Bristolian Dave is also a collector. He's got all kinds of books.
Yep. Yep.
That is fair. I love original art and always try to get it when it's available. Yep.
You know, the funny thing is, I collect original art from other artists. I haven't bought anything in a long time, but I've got a pretty good size art collection, and you know, I feel your pain, because there are artists who I'd like to own, and either A, I can't afford it, or B, they're not selling, and I give them the same thing. I'm like, come on, man, why not? So I get it. And in fact, if you want to see my original art collection on my YouTube channel, you can. I did a live stream. Obviously, it's still up, where I went through my original art collection.
Oh, nice. Nice. How cool is that?
Yep. Just search Andy Smith on YouTube, and you'll find my channel.
Definitely. I would buy so much original art if I could afford it. My house would turn into a museum.
Dude, if I could afford to frame all the art I have that I collect, I would, and then I would hang it up in my house. But my wife would never let me. So that's why I have my own little room. I've got original art hung up in here. Some stuff I drew, and then some stuff drawn by other people. So
your man cave, as it were.
Yep.
I like original art as well, but basically, because I'm cheap and I don't have a lot of money, I use these cheapo frames that you can get most anywhere. They have the 4 sides, the 4 edges that are made of kind of a plastic.
Yeah, I use those.
You've got a clear sheet of to cover the work.
And any how do I want to word it? I guess any serious art collector out there that frames their stuff, if they saw how I frame my stuff using those cheapy frames, they'd be like, "Oh my God!" Because literally, I go to Walmart, Walmart, I think, and I get the 11 by 17 black plastic frame that just has that cheap piece of plastic glass.
Yeah.
And I pop it out, pop it in, pop it closed, hang it up.
Yeah.
I don't have none of my stuff is framed with UV protection and all that garbage. So. I also don't have any of my art in direct sunlight, but
oh, right, yeah, that too.
I don't know how to do that, but I don't have anything framed like that well.
It sounds like Joe Hubert really prepared you guys for the industry.
He did. He said on my entrance interview to get into the school, he said, "After 3 years of school here, I'll jam 10 years of stuff down your throat, basically, in 3 years." So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. The Hubert School's not like regular college where you go to like one class for 3 hours and then you're done for the rest of the day and stuff like that. The Hubert School is like high school. You go from like, I don't know the hours anymore, but I know it's the same structure where you go 7 hours a day, and you have like an hour for lunch, and you have 2 classes for 3 hours each. So you have 1 in the morning, take lunch, 1 in the afternoon, 5 days a week.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, it actually sounds like one of those useful schools that teach you something.
It's hardcore. It's very hard to get a. Joe said, you know, if you need to work while you come here, it's going to be really difficult with the amount of homework and stuff you'll get. And he was right.
Oh man, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Christine says, I would love to grab original art just out of my price range. It would mean I'd have to reduce the amount of books I back.
No, don't do that.
That's what I do, Christine. I reduce the amount of books I buy and now spend more on the campaigns I do back.
That's the same here. I actually back more stuff that, you know, because I found there's less and less stuff that I get on a regular basis, and I'd rather back something either A, to support a friend, or B, because I'm like, that's really cool. I'm glad I, you know, saw it on Twitter or Facebook, you know. And, you know, I know everybody's different. And I know for me, once I back it, I pretty much forget about it. And then something comes in the mail months later, and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about this, and I get it. So
That's very much like me.
yeah, I mean, I don't. The fine thing is, I get updates from stuff I've backed, like we all do. I open it, I skim it, I delete it, and then that's that. And like I said, when it shows up, it shows up. Also, and once again, everybody's different. I totally understand. As somebody running a campaign and who's run one before, our goal is to be on time. I've backed stuff that has been 6-7 months late, but I never notice because I just don't pay attention. Once I back it, I'm kind of like, okay. And then when I get it, it's like I said, it's like a gift in the mail. And then I remember backing it, and that's that. I've only backed one campaign, thank God it wasn't that expensive, that never was fulfilled.
Oops. Eric usually gets a book for reading and then backs an original art tier or a sketch tier.
So I got some original art tiers on my campaign. I got a head sketch tier and I got a figure sketch tier. So there you go.
Nice. Christine might go that route in the end, Eric, but at the moment she's still in love with the huge choice. Yep. It's a bit like it used to be going into my local comic shop and browsing for a couple of hours and coming out with a bag load of comics. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does feel like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can't really do the whole sniffing thing with COVID now.
Well, you can.
Yeah, of course you can.
I'm not sniffing the person.
Don't let it stop you. I do that too, Christine. Lol. Last Friday, I came out with a stack of books and assigned Spider-Man Torment #1 with Stan Lee and Todd McFarlane. I was a happy man.
That's really cool.
Oh, nice.
That is awesome. I don't have anything signed by Stan. Did I meet Fraggy at Edge? Nope. I just met him online some years back. Like Dan actually worked at Extreme Studios. I never moved or anything. I just worked for Eric from where I was living at the time. Eric didn't have like a studio set up like Rob and Jim and most of us did. It was another crossroads in my career actually, because when Image started, I was already in the business for a little over a year. So I was still new to the business, but I was already in the business working for Marvel and DC. So when Image started and they put those ads out, Jim put the ad out looking for talent for Wildstorm, Rob put the ad out. It's just one of those you never know, because I didn't do it, but I did think about sending stuff over and seeing if I could get a job working in either one of those studios. But I also knew I'd have to move to California, and I didn't really want to have to move that far because I'm from the East Coast. So I figured, I'm doing good working at. I think I was working at Marvel at the time, so I didn't. It's one of those, what would happen type things that we'll just never know.
Thanks, Mods, for dropping the link. Everybody back this book if you haven't already. Man, one beautiful collection you've got.
Thank you.
School's teaching something useful? No. So I wish my family could have swung the money to go to the Hubert School.
It's still, I don't know when you would have went Wolverine, but I know it's still relatively inexpensive compared to other schools out there. It's obviously it's obviously more expensive than when I went. I mean, hell, when I went to the school, it was only 10 years old. Now it's 42 years old. So
that's how I am. Same as you, Andy. I back and for the most part forget about it until I'm notified it's shipped. Yep, same here.
It's like a nice surprise gift.
Yes. It's like Christmas every month.
You know, if you back enough campaigns and you actually look at the delivery dates on them, you could probably be like, oh, June, I'll get that. July, I'll get that. So
I'm not organized enough to do that. I would have gone in 1990. I'm 48 now, kind of past the window.
oh, you know what? I can actually. Well, I'm sure he knows how much it would have cost back then. I mean, I can tell you what it cost when I went. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. When I went in 1988, it was $8,000 a year when I went.
$8,000 a year.
And I think now, and with supplies and housing, and they only did housing for the first year. So with supplies and housing, it was about $11,000 a year.
Wow.
But now, tuition alone is, I believe, 17 or 18 a year.
Whew.
I think. I'm not exactly sure. I think. I still know obviously people there. So.
Do they offer things like financial aid back in the day?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yep. They always have. Now they have scholarships and.
All right. Yeah. So very good. Very good. And I think you mentioned this earlier, but how many pages do you have completed?
I have I'm working on 57 now.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm working on page 57 now. And it's 58 pages of story. And then there's going to be the bio pages and of the characters and to fill out the rest of the book and a couple other extra things in the actual book. And then the program book is, totally behind the scenes stuff.
Nice. Yeah, so everybody back this book. It's freaking awesome.
Thank you.
It's the trailer once more, and we'll wrap things up.
Cool.
FirstMan, you know the drill. A college kid is imbued with great power and likes it. Penumbra has other plans and hand delivers him to Monarch, a fun 64-page action-packed comic book harkening back to the glory days of Marvel Comics, only on Indiegogo.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Yeah, so your campaign's moving right along. You got 19 days left. Are you doing the method where you get first 30 days of funding and then the second 30 days of funding and then you go in demand?
Yeah, I got to see if I'm going to do the I got to see if I'm going to do the extra 30 days or not. It's not a decision I obviously need to make right now. In demand will happen regardless. So, because like the previous project's on in demand right now. So,
Right on.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm just not, obviously I'm not promoting that one because it's the previous one, but if anybody cares enough and wants to go to look at that one, they're more than welcome to, of course.
Absolutely. Right on. You are now at 5980.
Thanks.
For
That was very cool.
backers and 186% of your goal.
Nice.
Right
Very
on.
cool.
Very cool. Very cool. And yeah, it looks like everyone has to go. Damn, that's expensive. Also, anyone I would have wanted to learn from is long retired or dead. Whoops. 18K a year is nothing. I'm $80,000 in debt so far and about to rack up more debt once I start my doctorate program. Wow.
Then we can call you a doctor, though.
Yeah, well, that's true too. Yeah. Dr.
Yeah,
Eric
see,
McIntyre.
nobody called me a doctor.
Paging Dr. Eric McIntyre. Maybe
That's
I should went to the Hubert School instead. Great show, guys. When you're
Thank
finished
you.
here, come over to CGUK show. Art is so good. I love it. Thanks for the Dave. And yeah, good stream, guys. Back FirstMan. I'm going to give you the floor now. And would you do the honors and share how you can be found on social media?
Of course. Andy Smith Art on Twitter, Andy Smith on Facebook, Andy Smith Art on Instagram. YouTube is just search Andy Smith. You'll see this mug come up on a thumbnail for a video. Click on my channel. Please subscribe to it, share it, like it. Like everyone's trying to build up their YouTube channel, and I try to do a live stream a couple times a week and post drawing videos and stuff like that. Sometimes I'll go on and just draw. Like this morning, I was laying out a page for a couple hours, just taking questions, and had the full screen so you could watch the process. So that is how you get a hold of me.
Right.
And AndySmithArt.com, of course. So
cool. Well, you can find me on Facebook and YouTube under WyzGyz Entertainment, on Twitch at WyzGyz Twitches, on Twitter at WyzGyz Tweets. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Mark the bell for notifications. Indicate that you want all notifications, so hopefully you get notified when there's a new video or stream. I want to thank everyone in the chat. You guys are freaking awesome. You guys rock.
yeah, you guys rock. Good questions.
Thanks to everyone. Yeah, thanks for your awesome questions, too. Thanks to everyone who watches this on replay. And that reminds me I have some work I want to get started before topic list later. And thanks to everyone who watches us on replay. And thanks especially to our very, very special guest, Andy Smith. Thank you for joining us today. It's been awesome.
Thanks.
Let's wrap it up.
Final guest that is the only person below White Holiday in the ComicsGate phone book. It's my favorite failed clone of Peter Sammetti. The YouTube sensation. How you doing, Conrad? Welcome to the show.